Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
Brian Holt, welcome to the dungeon.
Well, thank you, Gary.
I have my room set up in the middle of my house with no windows, no external windows. It's just a hot house. I'll be sweating a whole lot pretty quickly in here because there's no airflow, no view of the outside world. That's why it's my dungeon.
Well, you're too addicted to the outside world, you see.
Mate, when you've been working outdoors as long as you have, then it's hard work being stuck in a room like this.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So, Brian, I want to introduce you to my listeners, and we're going to start with some basics. So, your name is Brian Holt. You live in Newcastle area,
Yep.
and you've been running your lawn care and gardening business. Remind me of the details. That was 30-something years.
31 years.
31 years.
Since
So
1933.
I've interviewed a couple of guys that have been running a business a similar amount of time to you. I think probably three of them actually. So we've had a quick chat before this about that. But you're saying you've got some unique details there that are worth paying attention to. One of them being that you've been working basically on your own for the entire time.
Yeah, never had employees.
Never had employees.
If I employed people, I'd be less happy and less affluent.
Fair enough. So one of the reasons why I do this podcast is so that other people thinking about getting into gardening and lawn care can get insight into what it's like running a business. And one of the key things that I see is a lot of people start like you on their own. And then when they get busy, they put on an employee or they put on what they call a helper or a subby or something along those lines. And then quickly, and I did this going back 14 years ago when I started, I got busy. I put on a helper and I quickly realized that by the time I paid their wage, I wasn't making much money. I was actually going backwards.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on how much you charge. You have to charge for the business, not just a rate for yourself. And
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about the formula for that because I haven't had employees. I've just been happy to work on my own.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, I have had to work through that, and I've interviewed I think it's 138 people now over the last couple of years, and people do it differently. Everyone has their own idea of what they want their business to look like. So I've interviewed quite a few people who have a lot of employees, and they quite enjoy doing that. And I've interviewed a lot of people that want to stay solo, like yourself, and I've interviewed people who have gone from being solo to having employees to going back to being solo or back and forth in between. So yeah, for myself, I've worked out the formulas and gone, okay, if people really want to go from solo to employing people, here's some numbers to think about. So what you're saying, you don't even have to think about that. So working on your own, it's easier for you to manage that, easier for you to enjoy working instead of worrying about paying for somebody else.
It's cons, hasn't it? You know,
Yeah.
I've been told by people that have a team that it's so much easier in some when you're in the middle of a hard job because they do the cleaning up for you and
Yeah.
they take the whole thing of having to have endurance away because it's the work's divided into the old thing of many hands make light work.
Yep.
But at the same time, you have to have work lined up for them. You
Yeah.
have to have profitable work that allows for that overhead. And I
Yep.
think people don't allow enough, usually, or they learn pretty quickly that they have to allow more. And the other thing is you have to start early enough to make good use of those employees that day. You can't have the type of hours that I run because I usually start quite late and
Okay.
just work as long as I need to.
Yeah.
All things being equal with the weather and daylight savings, whatever, and the amount of work I have to do. But I generally find I can start by 10, o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
and everything done. And I wouldn't be able to. I don't think that would work with employees, you know. And then if you wanted to change things around, your work schedule, you
Yep.
quickly make changes. I think you're less flexible with employees, I think.
Yeah. Well, I was telling you while we were getting ready to record that I'm having the rest of this week off work. I won't be going in for the next 3 days. And I've got an employee that'll be taking care of that for me. So for me right now, that's working well. I can set my employee some jobs to do and go, okay, I can walk away for the next 3 days and it'll be okay, business as usual.
Yeah. Well, as much as possible, if you work for yourself, you have to prioritize your health. I'm not
Yeah.
saying you haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know what's causing you to have days off, but
Yeah.
for me, I'm gifted with a fairly strong constitution. I'm
Yeah.
wiry and I don't carry any weight, and um, so I work well in the heat. I've got a very good immune system.
Yeah. Awesome.
I've had very little disruption from being sick over the years. Just a couple of hiccups in 2017, 2018, but not only for a bunch of days. But I
Yeah.
haven't fallen off a ladder and broken my leg or anything like that. So you have to really look after yourself, and I think
Yeah.
it's important anyway. But it's just amplified when you're by yourself and you've got no one else to rely on. It's a risk,
It
really, isn't
definitely
it?
is.
Life's full of risks, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's one of the reasons a lot of people consider putting on employees is so that if they do have to take time off work, then they've got employees to look after things and keep things running.
Yeah, all power
And
to them. Yeah,
yeah, and I think most people who start a lawn care business very quickly realize that they do need to turn up every day or they're not going to make any money.
yeah. Well, the other side of the coin is, the other consideration is that my business is primarily garden maintenance, and
Yeah,
it's not a lawn mowing business, so it's not just like set and forget. There's a lot of little decisions have to be made, a lot of finicky work to do with weed control and
yep,
care of gardens. Is a little bit more technical than just running a mower over the lawn. Not that that doesn't require skill; it does. But
yeah,
I often find, I'll get to a job and I've got to figure out what's going on with the garden. That
yeah,
requires the years of um, experience that I have to be able to figure that out. So I would find it really hard to get that level of expertise into employees.
yeah. So you've prioritized your health for the time you've been in business and made sure you stay healthy, I guess.
Well, we're predisposed towards that because of just our whole attitude to life and health. Uh,
Yeah,
we eat a largely plant-based diet at the moment, and I exercise for my work. I mean, it's like an extreme sport sometimes.
yeah,
My wife exercises, and so yeah, we're really focused on health anyway.
yeah.
So, aside from the business.
Yeah. Now, I've grown up in Currumbong. I've mentioned that to you. And in Currumbong, a lot of people are at Seventh day Adventists, which predisposes us to a mostly plant based diet as well.
Oh, okay. Well, the
So,
wife goes
yeah.
to markets every Sunday and gets the great produce from there, which is locally grown and
Yeah. Nice.
organically grown.
Yep.
My whole focus of organic things flows into how I approach my business as well. So that's
Yeah.
just part of our lifestyle and our
Yeah.
worldview.
Yeah. So, eating right, having a nice diet, being active, and yeah, I guess having the right attitude towards life is going to help to keep you healthy for a long time, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a man of faith, and so I add that into the mix.
Yep.
Believe in God to keep me. And there's a scripture which says, "A merry heart does good like a medicine."
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's another whole aspect to health and well-being.
Yeah, and like I said, I'd come from the Seventh Day Adventist community where that's built into the way we live.
Yeah, it's probably going to be helpful if you followed a few of their tips.
Yeah, yeah, certainly has proven to be.
They have statistically Seventh-day Adventists live longer than other people.
Yeah, that's it. So I think you'll find there's a lot of Seventh-day Adventists who don't follow that healthy lifestyle, but those
Yeah.
who do certainly prove to live longer.
Well, some people think that if you eat like we do, that you're going to become anemic and you're not going to get your minerals and vitamins, and that's just not true. But
Yeah, I think the one thing that seems to come up time and time again if you are eating a plant-based diet is vitamin B12. So most vitamins are generally assumed that you get them regardless, whereas vitamin B12 is one of those things which the doctors will get a bit nitpicky over and say if you're not eating meat a few times a week, you're not getting your B12. And the rhetoric I hear is that if you're eating good organic vegetables that are grown in proper soil, not grown by the supermarket chains, then you're generally going to get B12 through your vegetables as well.
yeah, I could list a few things that have got all that sort of thing in it. But
Yeah.
however, I mean, if you have a wide range of plant-based food, then you're going to get all of the essential minerals and protein as well.
Yeah.
I never come up deficient in blood tests. I call them my bloody tests. Yeah, so you better get them when you get older.
Yeah, that's the fun we've got to live with at the moment. I'm not as old as you, but I'm getting there, and you have
I'm
to have
so
too many
old,
tests.
experience with God back in the no, not God. One of his followers, Moses. That's it.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, no, I have to have too many blood tests, and with some of the issues I've got going on in my health, I've mentioned it on previous episodes of my podcast with having celiac disease and colitis, but I have had an issue with low iron levels at one stage and had to have an iron infusion because of that. So not because of my diet, but because my bowels are not doing the right thing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, we can send you a few hints after post interview, and you can look at them and see what you make of them. But there's probably a few things that might help. But I'm not going to turn this into like a, a consultant's a consult on how to fix your condition. But however, I think there's hope.
Hey, unfortunately, your internet connection went really terrible just as you started talking about that, and I missed what you said. But nonetheless, like you're saying, we're not going to make this into a consult. But the best thing I have found to remedy most of my issues, apart from like celiac disease, you've got to get rid of gluten out of your diet. But for
Mhm.
the colitis, the best thing that's worked for me is getting off dairy. So dairy was causing most of the problem.
Yeah, people react in varying degrees to those type of foods, and
Yeah.
I always think it's because of the um, how your condition has deteriorated that you become intolerant to things,
Yeah.
and you build up tolerances. I mean, look at the French. I don't know how many celiacs there are in France, but they call their diet the French paradox because they eat
Yeah.
cream, they eat fat, they eat all the stuff you're not supposed to eat, but they're mostly healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some interesting, like you say, paradoxes, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars. Do you want to leave your job to create a profitable and enjoyable lawn and garden business? Aussie Lawn Stars shares the stories, lessons, and advice to help you grow a healthy, productive, efficient, and sustainable business. Do you want more or simply have a question about what you heard? Contact Aussie Lawn Stars at iCloud.com or look me up, Gary Ashton, on Facebook and Messenger for individual help. Business coaching helps you to have the right mindset and perspective when it comes to daily decision making, planning, or knowing what to look for to improve your business. thinktankcoaching.com.au has helped me, and they can help you move towards your business goals. Visit their website or email them, thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. If you want to establish the best practices in bookkeeping, accounting and business structure, contact Adrian from Prosper Financial on 0249 773363. And you all need to head to Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia and the Australian Professional Lawn Contractors Facebook groups for supportive communities focused on our industry. Yeah, well, see, I've always been overly concerned with making sure I don't have a really high sugar intake, because I know that for me has been the cause of some of my issues is too much sugar intake. So
Absolutely.
one of the interesting factors there is that the dairy issue that I have is related to the sugar in dairy.
Yeah. Well, look, I've had to, even though my diet I think was pretty disciplined.
Yeah.
Lately, I've had to cut down on things like dairy, olives. I've had,
Yep.
even though I only have a smear of Vegemite on one piece of toast. When you add up the olives, the cheese, the salt that's in cheese, the salt that's in olives,
Yeah.
salt is a big thing as well.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, I don't have too much intake with sugar, but you have a bit of jam
Yeah.
here, a bit of this, that, and the other there. I would say fructose is not like other sugars, and honey's not like other sugars. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's where you can get your sweet hit from all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've found if I eat fresh fruit and I limit my sugar intake from things that are artificially sweetened, I do pretty well.
Yeah, but I've had blocked ears because that's what's made me have to make a bit of an adjustment. Yeah,
Yeah, fair enough.
I have a propensity towards earwax, and I make
Yeah.
narrow ear canals, and
Yep.
so there's nothing like not being able to hear people properly for 2 weeks motivate you to make a change.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
That's horrible.
I've been into the doctor once to have my ear canals cleaned out because the earwax blocked up one of my ears.
Yeah,
But that's a while ago. I haven't had a problem since.
and I found that the doctors are the cheapest option. Like your flat fee to go to them is $40.
Yeah.
And that covers the nurse who does the syringing and
Yep.
talking to the quack and everything. So, whereas if you go to one of those places that specialises in removing earwax, it's $140.
Yeah. Yeah. I must admit, when I went to the doctor and I asked them to syringe my ears, they looked at me a bit strange.
Yeah, not all of them do it. Yeah,
But they said, okay, come back for another appointment and we'll do it. And then, yeah, like you, just, your flat fee
has to
and
be
the time it takes to get it done, it was done.
has to be a fairly big clinic that will cope with that. They've got a nurse, not
Yeah.
just a little two bob job with three doctors and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, it was 100% effective because it's a
Oh,
real problem when your ear's fully blocked up with earwax.
yeah, yeah. But you
Yeah.
shouldn't have to go and get your ears cleaned, and you shouldn't
Yeah.
have to do any sort of intervention. Your ears are supposed to clean themselves.
Yeah, that's right. Mm,
They're
they
not
should
doing
be
it on their
self-cleaning.
own word, and in the close proximity, I'm getting 2 episodes with earwax. Okay, well, that tells me, even though I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, I can tell when there's a message coming that says, "Brian, do something about your health."
Yep. Yeah, well, like you, I like a little bit of cheese, and being that um, I can't have cream or full milk, cheese is the one thing which they say is not full of sugar in its natural state. So I'm like, okay, cheese is one piece of dairy that I can eat with a little bit of comfort, and it's like, oh, I just got to make sure I don't eat too much, otherwise it does have some negative effects.
You can put a little quarter of a teaspoon, say, of honey in your tea, and it won't take the flavour, but it takes the bitterness off it a bit. But I have honey in black coffee,
Yeah.
filtered coffee in the mornings. One coffee only.
Okay.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the morning, and that's it. So I've got a lot of disciplines going on like that.
Yeah, it's important to excuse me. It's important to make sure you're disciplined in the approach to these things,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Look, I drink 3 beers a week, and I
Yeah.
drink on Friday night, Saturday lunch, and Sunday lunch, and that's it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I cut down. I have 2 bits of toast in the morning. I don't have endless rounds of toast. I don't have endless rounds of food. I try not to eat late at night. I eat
Yeah.
fruit through the day and drink water. I
Yep.
don't have any soft drinks. I don't have zero Coke or any of that. That's actually deadly stuff.
Yep.
And so I'm very disciplined with my diet. And even though you can tell by not seeing my whole profile that I'm
Yeah.
not got heaps of fat on me. In fact, I've got very little. I'm a bit of a genetic freak when it comes to my build. So
Yeah.
not
But
because of what
your
I'm eating.
your body doesn't look as worn out as you would expect. And I'm thinking you said you're 66, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your body doesn't look as worn out as a lot of people that are 66.
No, I'm blessed with good genetics, I think, but also if I compare myself to my father, I'm way ahead of him as far as looking youthful and being
Yeah.
fit. And I would put it down to the lifestyle of being a gardener for 30 years
Yep.
plus, eating well.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, everybody says they're eating well, but a lot of them are in denial. And, I mean,
Yeah.
we have more people now that are obese than we've ever had, and
Yeah.
that leads to 3 major killers: heart disease, diabetes, and cancer.
Yeah. Well, I know I went to the doctor going back. We should move on from this topic in a second, but
Yeah. I've got plenty to say, so that's fine. I've got
but yeah,
plenty to say. You can always cut this bit out, but there's lots to
yeah,
talk about. I mean, we could go on for a long time about this. Yeah.
yeah. I went to the doctor probably going back 10 years or more, probably, yeah, it'd be more than 10 years ago. And I said, I'm having a little bit of chest pain and I want to check out what's going on. And the doctor had a look at me and he said, you're in your 30s and you're not an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, so you're not at risk of any heart issues. And I said, yeah, this is literally what he said to me.
Yeah, well, he needs to just go and walk on the street and look out, and watch people coming up and down the street.
Yeah.
Just
So,
go ask the airlines how many people need two airline seats now. Well, they take up
well,
half of the next person's. You know.
the thing that the doctor said to me, and I argued with him over this, and I said, I don't want to know. He said, you're within the normal range. And I said, really? I don't want to be in the normal range. I want to be in the healthy range.
Oh yeah. Well, my test. If I told you the results of my test, you would hate me because I sound like bragging. I do
Yeah.
have one Achilles heel though, which is not my heel actually. It's my heart. I have
Yeah.
a murmur, and that
Okay.
is genetic, and it's like a
Yeah.
leak valve.
Yeah.
Uh, but I didn't pick it up until a doctor heard it through the stethoscope, a little bit of a sloppy sound or irregular sound, sent me off
Yeah.
for tests, and I've been to see a specialist, and they gave me the stress test and all of that, and I
Yep.
went and got a what do you call it? The test where they what's it called? Where they test basically for scale in your arteries and so on.
Yeah. I
And
know what you're talking about, but I don't know what the
I
test
got the
is.
result of 0.
Yeah.
Um, but on the stress test, it took 9 minutes for my heart rate to come up to what
Yeah.
they
Wow.
needed to. So they kept making me go faster and faster and faster till it came up.
Yep.
And because my heart rate at rest is 40 and my blood pressure is really low, so therefore,
Wow.
because of those two things, it sort of nullifies the danger of the heart defect,
Yeah. Yep.
provided I'm not doing extreme sports over long periods of time, like marathon running or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I actually quite like running. I started running when I turned 40 and I can't run at the moment because one of my knees is giving me a bit of grief and it's been really bugging me. I want to get back out there and do some
Yeah, I
regular
know
running.
right. Yeah, I've had issues with joints and stuff, but I've had to sort that out.
Yeah.
Drink more water. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. Well, shall we get back to talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
the
yeah.
lawns and gardens?
Absolutely. So
Because
what
we
do you
we
want
could talk about health issues all day, I'm sure.
to know? I know. Yeah, I can give you my backstory to my business if you like.
Yeah, well, let's do that. So you're saying 31 years in business. So that would mean you were in your 30s when you started
35.
your.
Yeah,
Sorry?
I was 35.
35 when you started.
Yeah,
So
when
what
you
did you do before gardening?
casual teaching and also a range of other odd jobs at times, like working in an industrial job and working on a construction site.
Yeah, okay.
No, I've never had. Oh, plus I had for 12 months a full-time job. The only full-time. Oh no, I've had two full-time jobs. One working in a
Yeah.
factory for 18 months, and one
Yeah.
working as a bread carter around the lake, around the west side of Lake Macquarie, in 1981 when I was very young, and that was for 12 months. And apart from that, I've done casual teaching, and I found I just couldn't. I could not sustain a young family on casual teaching. I couldn't get a full-time job in this area, and we wanted to stay in this area. So
Yeah.
therefore, I needed to do something to be able to up the income.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I know a few teachers at the moment, and the casual teaching rates have actually gone up quite substantially. So they're not too bad if you get enough work for it.
Oh, if you could work all through the year, but you're working for. Here's the thing with casual teaching: you work for the weeks when school is on, and then
Yeah.
you work within those weeks. You usually work in the winter when everyone's got the flu, or at
Yep.
the end of the year when teachers have long service leave. During the
Yeah.
weeks of um, Christmas break, and then add on to that the balmy weather of January and whatever when the sports carnivals, everything around, they don't get work. Yeah, so not much
Yeah.
unless you're really lucky.
Yeah. So it'd be okay to have it as a supplement, but not enough on its own.
That's right. Well, I kept casual teaching going while I was building my business. So I had
Yeah, okay.
because I could work around my casual teaching with
Yeah.
the gardening business for the days I wasn't working, and even in the afternoon, go and do a job or two. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when you first started your business, you're 35, did
Mm.
you start straight into gardening or did you start mostly doing lawns or was it?
It was a mix, but mostly lawn mowing, I'd say.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've got I had a logo back in those days of a running clock pushing a lawnmower with sweat dripping off his face, and I drew that by hand myself.
Nice.
That I think was actually pretty dumb of me to sort of just focus on that because I found I had a greater um, oh, a greater adaptation to gardening. You know,
Yeah. Okay. So you found over time that you preferred gardening and that by the sounds of it, there's several reasons you prefer gardening over lawn mowing.
oh yeah, there is number one. It sets me apart as a garden maintenance specialist, and
Yep.
that's niche for me because not many people are actually just doing gardening.
Yeah.
And the ones that do may just do like a quick clean up of the garden, or they may clean up your gardens for one offs for sale for the house. And, they have all these different angles, but mine's just a regular maintenance,
Yep.
turning up each 2 or 4 weeks mostly, and garden maintenance only. And the other reason is because running the equipment can be expensive.
Yeah.
And to run a rider mower is hugely expensive once they start to get a bit of wear on them.
Yep.
It's more than
Yeah.
that car sometimes.
I have seen that firsthand, have had ride on mowers that as they get older, the running costs get
Escalate.
massive. Yeah.
I had a gearbox um, where it was bracketed onto the back of the mower. That sort of from the back going backwards and forwards, that wore that out, so the gearbox actually collapsed, and I had
Wow.
to re-weld like a brackets for it. I think that cost me about $1,200 years ago just for that.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it adds up pretty quickly once you start
Oh,
having major items fail like that.
broken belts, you name it, yeah, everything. Yeah. Gearboxes, unless you've got a really good machine that's up to going on slopes, gearboxes wear out fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Most people use a zero-turn mower instead of a tractor-style mower these days.
Yeah,
If they,
going over slopes, though, sort of thing. A lot of the
it,
time, they have to go sideways on a slope. I think.
yeah, the zero-turns lose traction on slopes pretty easily. I think that it depends on the size of the zero-turn as well, because I've got a 42-inch zero-turn and a 61-inch, and the
Yeah.
61-inch has a much wider stance and much better grip overall.
The best machine I had that lasted quite a while before it gave issues, but though apart from the gearbox collapsing bracket, was a King Cat, which had a wonderful uh, um, 18 horsepower V twin motor, and I think that even though it said it was um, Briggs and Stratton, I think it was Kawasaki,
Oh, okay, interesting.
because I think I found Kawasaki on it somewhere. But
Yeah, wow.
was unstoppable. The motor never ever died, but the rest of the machine died around it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, my parents had a couple of acres out at Currumbong here, and 2.5 acres, and we went through the old Victor with the T-bar on it, and then the Greenfield, and then
Yeah.
we eventually got a King Cat.
Even they've got their faults. They've got a big solid deck, but they're not bracketed well, anchored well. And, there's a lot of problems with mowers. Anyway, yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about any of that.
Yeah, okay. So you don't do a lot of lawn mowing now?
No, I have a tiny bit of lawn mowing I do, just two bulk jobs as part of garden maintenance.
Yeah, okay.
I'll do the gardens and then I'll run over there, postage size stamp lawn.
Yeah, okay.
Only a couple of those.
Yep. Yeah, so you've found that sticking to the gardening, you have less expense with your tools,
Absolutely.
and I'm guessing your arsenal of tools is going to have a lot of hand tools, and then your hedge trimmers and a blower, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I still don't have a big array of tools. I'd like to spend money and get some Japanese made hedged shears.
Yep.
About $400 a pop, and I think the other one, just the straight one, the curved ones are expensive, and the straight ones I think about $276 or something I saw on some site. So I think that
Yeah.
I
Okay.
make good use of those. I just use a hedge trimmer to trim topiary type things now.
Yeah.
Managed to do work like create an elephant out of out of shrubs. Not many people can say they've got an elephant in their in their photo list.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not a lot of people that get into topiary to that extent.
No,
Yeah. So you find the hedge trimmer is more productive than using the shears for a lot of things now.
yeah, although it's heavy.
Yeah.
This is one probably good reason I could invest in electric.
Okay. So you're still running petrol hedge trimmer
Running
then?
petrol, but I've got the steel hedge trimmer, which is just so rock solid, and the
Yep.
beautiful, gorgeous, beautiful two-stroke motor that just ticks over like a clock. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's hard on your shoulders and muscles in your back and all that sort of thing. I'm going to a massage therapist or whatever at the moment, yeah, to try and keep me in good like that, which is good.
Yeah, I have found that over the years. You go from winter into summer and all the muscles start hurting a bit more, and visit a massage therapist or a chiropractor or a physiotherapist, depending on what's hurting at the time.
Yeah, it's important to look after yourself like that.
Yeah,
But I do a lot of work where I'm holding the hedge trimmer up at shoulder height, which is extreme work, because
it
those
is.
are heavy, and it just saves getting a ladder and moving along,
Yep.
but you pay for it.
Yeah, I've found shoulder injuries are one of the more difficult things to deal with when you're getting older.
Yeah, I've had tennis elbow in both arms.
Yeah, yeah, that can be challenging.
I used to have a saying that the machine is worth more than the job. But now I have a saying, I'm worth more than the job.
Yeah, so both are true, but I guess see, I'm 46, so I'm 20 years younger than you, and I'm still sitting there going, okay, I've got to last a few more years yet.
Yeah, yeah. You've got to get a few more lawns out of you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I do a mix of lawn mowing and gardening at the moment. It's probably 50-50.
All right.
But yeah, I find whippersnipping's probably the hardest thing on my body out of everything I do.
Yeah, okay. I've got a very light um, hedge trimmer. Oh, what is it? Sorry,
Whippersnipper?
whippersnipper, as you'd call it.
Yeah, line trimmer.
Yeah, brush cutter's the right term, but
Yep.
in English call them strimmers.
Yeah,
I've
yep.
got a light one of those, which I picked up secondhand for $120. It's a
Yeah.
Mitsubishi, and it's just
Okay.
a corker of a machine. It's the best I've ever had. It's not as powerful as the ones I had before, but I
Yeah, okay.
don't do a lot of heavy work like overgrown edges on buffalo lawns and all that sort of thing anymore. Like
Yeah.
use 3.3 grade cord.
Yep.
But yes, if anybody's out there, I've got a big, thick 3.3 cord packet,
An alloy head.
brand new, a whole roll of it. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
cost me over $100 back in the day.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, I've found before I started using battery gear that the still FS94R was one of my preferred whippersnippers. And then going to battery gear, I found lighter, less vibrations, and you don't have the exhaust near your arm or blowing smoke up your face.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, those exhaust fumes are supposed to be carcinogenic.
Yeah.
And so God only knows how much of that I've breathed in. What I do have in favour of the equipment I use 98 grade fuel. I used to use 95, but I go to Costco, so I use 98.
Yeah. Okay.
I run still fully synthetic oil, so the thing runs
Yep.
clean as a whistle. Usually the
Yeah.
brown coloured. So
Yep.
therefore, it is very clean compared to a machine that's not run like that.
Yeah. Well, I've been running the still oil, and I've run 95 octane for most of the time I've been in business.
Yeah, and generally, if you do that, you'll hardly ever have to change spark plugs and things like that.
That's it. It makes a world of difference. Keep it clean. But yeah, I've made the move to battery gear for most of my handheld tools now. So
I'm thinking of doing that. I hate the idea of battery things because I feel like this whole pressure to adapt that is just wrong.
yeah,
So people are finding they're getting house fires from
yep,
batteries charging up and all this sort of thing.
yeah,
But apart from that, I mean, it would be wonderful to have something light
yep.
and
It,
without
it's
fumes. Yeah. My overalls stink when I come home.
from the
Probably
fuel.
doesn't stink when I get there. It's when it's the next day. You can smell it on your overalls. If you think, oh, they look pretty clean, you got to put them on, and they stink. That's because of the fumes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, now that I'm not using petrol hand tools very often, the petrol tools I'm using are the ride-on mower. So without using petrol hand tools very often, you kind of don't have to deal with that too often.
Yeah. So I'm considering that. I must.
Yeah,
Yeah, being out in the open air would help, but they still, in their great wisdom, put the exhaust on the left hand side of the machine. And I'm right-handed, so therefore, when I'm up here like this, where do you think the exhaust is pointed? At your
yeah,
face.
right at you. Yeah. Well, I'm left-handed, and I found the same problem with the steel whippersnippers. When I'm holding the whippersnipper, the exhaust is right up against my arm because it's designed for a right-handed person.
Yeah, you're burning your arm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was quite happy to get rid of the petrol whippersnippers, and I've still got some, but I don't use them hardly at all these days. I'm using the battery ones.
I've got a graveyard in my garden shed of old steel Formix brush cutters in case I
Yeah.
ever decide to get them fixed.
Yeah. Well, I've still got one of the Still Formix brush cutters and got the Still BR 600 backpack blower, which is a Formix as well.
Yeah, I used a steel Formix brush cutter and my old King Cat ride-on to clear Charlestown TAFE site. when it was a jungle. It'd become Jumanji after years of disuse.
Yeah. Wow.
The grass was up to my waist.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, the old steel brush cutter is good for clearing overgrown grass like that.
Mm. Oh yeah. I used to call mine the ass kicker.
Yeah.
And when you
I,
started the thing up, people would turn around. What? What was that? You know, it goes out. Yeah, it's such a grunty sound of it.
Do you know what size your one is? Because the one I'm been running is the 131.
It was the bigger motor of the two at the time.
So it could be the 240 or the 250 maybe.
I can't remember.
Yeah. I can't remember the Formix. They have one that's it's a 2 number, so I just can't remember which one it is, but they do have one up there.
Right.
And then they've got the standard 2-stroke one as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So
So
Brian,
go on. You've got more to ask because I've got more to tell if you want to hear it.
yeah, definitely happy to keep on going. Do you want to raise any particular topics? Go for it. I was just going to ask about how things changed in your business over time, but you go for it.
Oh yeah. Well, things have changed a lot. I mean, I began with a Yellow Pages ad.
Yeah.
I had an old Holden Kingswood station wagon, a little bent bar whippersnipper, and a small domestic rated lawnmower. I let it
Yeah.
dropped. Most of my work came from Yellow Pages at the time. We used to receive payments by cheque.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did one-offs, and you did quotes, and so therefore I'd go in and I'd waste a lot of time doing quotes, or
Yeah.
you may not get paid by somebody if it's a one-off,
Yep.
and so it's always a risk. Now I just do regular maintenance and an hourly rate. It's a fairly
Yep.
high hourly rate, and I only do, yeah, I don't do quotes. I just send them
Yep.
an information letter. Most of my work comes in from the website. I have a really good website, and I've got a good
Yeah. Okay.
online presence. I've been on to being on the internet, like Google Maps and so on, right from the start.
Yeah.
So I've kept refining that. I should spend more time on my website at the moment, but I've been a bit hard pressed to get to it. But that's
So
how.
how long have you had the website running? How
Pardon?
many years? How many years have you had the website going?
Oh, I think we got a computer in 2007. We're quite late to get a computer.
Yeah.
And then it was probably somewhere around about the 2008 or something like
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Okay. So you've
Website
had
was
it going for probably more than 15 years.
Yeah, it's been going a long time. And that's once that really took off, that's when there was just no need for Yellow Pages.
Yeah.
It cut a big cost out.
Yep.
And as I used to put like a display ad in there, but it was just a little box, but it had all the essential information used to stand out.
Yep.
But that's changed. Probably my clientele's changed a lot because I used to do when I was doing the lawnmower and so on. I'd work for industrial sites and uh, you know places like that. Whereas now I just work for busy professionals and business people with people with a few bob.
Yeah.
And I think I've refined over the years how I deal with my customers. I've learned to really, I mean, I learned early on how to have a good phone manner.
Yep.
Things like listening. It's so
Yeah.
important. Just let them talk. And they've seen your website. They talk
Yep.
themselves into hiring you if you just shut
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing is just to be friendly and to
Yeah.
treat customers with a lot of respect and treat them like royalty
Yeah.
and be reliable and communicate well.
Yep. Definitely.
So you send them, a message saying you're going to be there, and You don't get bent out of shape if someone sends you a text message after 8 o'clock at night. Like one
Yep.
guy did that fixed my computer once. He told me off because I rang him at 8.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. So you've learned quite a few valuable lessons there over time. That's great.
yeah. The other one is the hourly rate. I've learned
Sorry, I'm losing you.
confidence in what you think you're worth. Look people in the eye and just in a normal tone of voice tell them what your charge is, and
Yep.
then again you just shut up, and then if they think that your services are impressive enough, will hire you based on that if they can afford that. If they can't,
Yeah.
well, it's a vetting process which basically filters people out. I mean, I've got a saying that the
Yeah.
people who pay the least appreciate the least. But you have to look people in the eye and be confident that what you're charging you are not ripping them off.
Yeah.
And
Now,
that's something that I think a lot of guys have trouble with. I,
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
I
I
I listen to what other contractors are saying at the moment
pardon?
with their rates, and a lot of people will say, don't give people an hourly rate, give them a job rate only. So, say
Or you
a
can
gardening job where,
in your job rate,
yeah,
you see? Because if you, in their minds, they're thinking this will take all day.
yeah,
In your mind, you're thinking it will take me just a few hours or 2 hours or whatever.
yep,
And to be quite honest, if people in their minds a lot of the time have hired me, they think the job is enormous. Because to me, I've seen everything. So
yeah,
therefore, I'm not fazed by things that they think are massive issues. So you
yep,
could probably go well with the job rate if you had the courage to do that. But I just find just being out there with your hourly rate, it just saves arguments about the cost and the value for money.
yeah. Well, I've noticed if you give people a job rate, they will often be calculating in their head what that's going to cost them per hour. So even if you don't give them an hourly rate, they're still going to be trying to do the math.
Yeah, he was only there for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And he charged me $500. That's quite a lot per hour, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can get caught out if you're not very transparent about it. But that seems to work for a lot of people is to go, okay, I'll charge a job rate and I'll win some, I'll lose some. But on the whole, they hope to win more than they lose. And that's what makes them keep on doing it that way.
Okay. Well, when people contact me, I send them an information letter.
Yeah.
And then if you send a letter, it's in print.
Yep.
Because I was caught out once by this lady who I told her my hourly rate on the phone. Halfway through the job, she figured out what my rate was, and she panicked and made me basically cut the time down by heaps. And so
Yeah.
I had to speed up to try and make sure that it was finished because I couldn't leave things half trimmed.
Yep.
And so I thought, and she said, "How come you charge that much?" She said, "Oh, I'm a school teacher and I don't get paid that much." So I had to tell her, well, I was a school teacher.
Yeah. And I'm
That's
not
why I
teaching anymore. Yeah.
But
So I guess,
if you put an information letter out, it's in print, and people have time to absorb it, and they haven't got to give you an answer straight away. There's no awkward silence on the phone, you know, and then everything is understood. Like you want to get paid straight away on there.
yep.
My terms are payment on receipt of invoice, and
Yep.
I put the debt in the very rare case or the very unlikely case of non-payment or part payment, the debt belongs to the debtor. I'll put that in
Yeah.
terms, and then I say that by hiring me, you accept these terms.
Yep.
So that just gets all of that out of the way, and then we can just
Yep.
concentrate on the gardens and get to
Yeah.
know each other.
Yeah. Now on the hourly rate, a lot of contractors struggle when they first start out with charging a rate that is worthwhile to actually stay in business. And this is why I've talked about the fact that if you put on an employee, when I first put on an employee, I was losing money because I wasn't charging a good rate.
Mm.
I hear in today's dollars, the people that I talk to, as low as $40 an hour, and you still hear the horror jobs occasionally of $25 an hour.
Well, I
But
all the money in 1993.
the average today seems to be somewhere between $80 and $120 an hour, and there's suggestions that it should be over 120, between 120 and 150 an hour. But there's variation in that.
Yeah. Well, I'll be straight with you. My hourly rate at the moment is $154.
Yeah,
It's gone up progressively over the years, usually by $20 at a time.
yeah,
And I'm now raising it to 176. Now, it
yeah,
takes a lot of courage and
yep,
confidence, but I have um, the background, the history,
yeah,
and the results, so I can do that. I think if you're starting out, you'd be wise not to try and charge. You wouldn't want to charge that type of money starting out. You've got to start lower and maybe not even rely on your business entirely in the beginning, and
yep,
the wife's working or something else.
yeah,
Then, as you get the chalk up the innings and the results, got the photographs to prove what you've done and the reviews and everything else, then you've got the credibility. Then you can put the price up. I remember one
yep.
guy, and he was a really, really unintelligent fellow, and he was working as a tree lopper, and he told me, "Oh, if I see a expensive car parked in the driveway, I always charge more."
Yeah, yeah,
You're an idiot. He's got no idea. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I guess what you're saying, though, is doing that filtering from a different angle, right? You're saying that's the rate that I charge, and the people who don't have the capacity to pay it aren't customers.
The people who don't have the capacity to pay it will always find someone to suit their budget.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they may not get the quality, I'd say they wouldn't get the quality of what I'm delivering, but they'll get something. And
Yeah,
people are in a situation where, for whatever reason, they can't do it themselves, either too busy or their health or their age or whatever prevents them.
yep,
And, so yeah, there's a contractor of some sort out there for you somewhere. Although I must
yeah,
admit, I had to hire a gardener for our rental. Now,
yeah,
the process of doing that has been enormously painful. So I
yeah,
know what my customers are, how grateful they are when they find someone who's a gardener that turns up. And
yep,
that's gold, just to have that. Just someone who is a gardener who turns up.
yeah,
'Cause I've tried like a guy who's been in business for many years, and he says that he does gardening, but they're mostly lawn mowing.
yep,
And all they have to do is trim 2 hedges and
yeah,
let a few weeds out of a front garden. That's it.
yeah,
I get the whole. I used to do it. Take me less than an hour to do the whole thing, and now I'm paying these people who are used by the real estate agents.
yeah,
But this is my third gardener I've been through, so I'm paying the people the real estate agent use because they can put a bit of pressure on them to
mm,
turn up and do it, even though they haven't turned up this time. The first they haven't turned up yet,
yeah,
but I can ring them up and they'll get onto them because they get all their work from the real estate agents.
yep,
So, but yeah, I found it really hard to find a gardener,
yep.
and so yeah,
Yeah, it is.
go through.
I, I've talked to a few people that live away from the Newcastle area but have an investment property in Newcastle. And one guy I was talking to a few weeks ago lives in Sydney. He's a builder, works in Sydney,
Yeah,
and he said, "Have you got any good contacts for people in Newcastle because the gardeners up there are so unreliable?"
absolutely.
And same experience as you. He couldn't find somebody who's reliable. He's had been through so many people that just didn't turn up.
Yeah, well, I don't want to show my face at the rental because familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah,
If they see me, I'm the landlord turning up. They feel like I'm coming to inspect the place. or
Yeah.
they want to offload to me what they think should be fixed or whatever else.
Yeah.
I just want to deal through the agents and not meet them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've had that issue before.
people that I work for, I've just picked up one I'll start tomorrow who lives in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had similar issue before with rental where it was a case of going, okay, it's not great if you own the rental and the tenants there know you're the landlord, and then they start treating it as if, oh yeah, while you're here, do this and do that.
Yeah, it's so much simpler if you just obey that rule. Don't show your face.
Yeah,
But
definitely, it's a
hiring
smart move.
it's not easy.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'm a rare bird.
Efficiency is the thing that rules a business and the decisions you make as a small business owner. Right Mowers give you the options in their product lineup to match efficiency with size, fuel usage, and the type of jobs you want to target, from catching to mulching or side discharge, from roadside verges to acreages, and manicured lawns to 6 feet tall and super long. I've been using the Right Stander I 42-inch with a Catch Pro for manicured areas and the Stander ZK61 to maximise productivity for large open acreage mowing. If you need to replace your push mower, try the 32-inch Stander B. If you have more open access to residential properties, there's a 42 through to 48-inch option that suits you. And if you want to enter the acreage market, the 52, 61 and 72-inch machines have choices in engine size and model type to suit the work you want it to do. Right Standards go the distance, saving you time and money season after season.
Just to reiterate, I think I can't emphasise enough the importance of a good website, which outlines services really well.
Yep.
And put a little blog post feature in there, link Instagram to your posts of pictures of your stuff to your website, which then refreshes the content and makes Google attracted to it.
Yep.
Do it.
Yeah, I've found.
Search for Gardeners Newcastle, you'll find I come up. And
Yeah, I've found having Instagram and social media linked to your website is critical, and having the Google My Business ad, or not ad, but just Google My Business with a location set helps people to find you.
Yeah, I don't have a location. I have Newcastle listed as my location.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't put my address on there for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that's it.
Protect privacy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so that works. Yeah, and I mean, my site's optimised with the word Newcastle and gardening and garden maintenance and to the max, and so that works. But I've got a lot of good content on there as well, and a lot of photographs.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I can bring up for you is the issue of taking photos of your work.
Yeah.
I can't emphasise enough how important that is as well. So that when you do a website or a Google Maps site, you throw a photo up and a little story with it, and that will definitely. I know all this stuff takes time.
Yeah.
But it's important, and if you want to promote your business and find it easy to get good customers, good paying customers, you've got to appear to be really on the ball.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got to become
I
good
would.
at photography.
The one thing I've heard from some of the people I've spoken to is that occasionally you get a customer who doesn't want their garden or their property put up on the internet. So it's a good thing to incorporate that into your contract with the customer, or to have that conversation with them that you want to use photographs from their property.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be safe with that because most of my customers do not have social media. They're too busy. They're just too busy, and if it doesn't identify the place as where it is, its location, I think that. I mean, if you say the suburb, that's all right, but you wouldn't have a picture of their letterbox,
Yeah.
40 something street, Yeah, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, you don't want it to look like Google Street View.
No, I think you take I've thought about that. But
Yeah.
generally, I don't think it's an issue because of the fact that, to start with, they're never going to see it. And
Yeah.
also, it's not as descriptive or doesn't pin them down to where they live. And that's the, but also, showing stuff that of their that they may regard as private, you wouldn't want, even if the yard's messy or whatever, or there's stuff lying around, or if kids things or whatever, I don't know, or their possessions, people might want to. So long as the location's not nailed down, I think you'd be pretty safe with it.
Yeah.
It's not like, and you also, there's an important thing that you have to have with your customers, which will preclude all those kinds of troubles.
Yep.
And that's called a relationship.
Yep.
If you're a friendly guy or woman, whatever the case may be, and you are someone who is known and trusted to them, you become like their family doctor. If you're
Yeah.
like for me, I'm there on a regular basis, so therefore I'm building a rapport with people. And when I send off my invoice, this is another thing, I put a little note in there, and I often put something along the lines of "keep well" or "I hope things are going well for you at the moment," whatever. So but you're building a relationship with people. Take time to talk to your customers occasionally. If your customer gives you their time and wants to talk to you, make sure you take that up. Although some people can flip and talk, and you've got to watch out for those ones. The ones that will nail you to the spot for half an hour. Yeah.
Do you find them objecting to paying for that time? Because you're billing them by an hourly rate. So if you're there for an hour and a half,
I won't be standing charging them for talking to them for half an hour. Most of the time, you'll talk for 5 minutes, and
yeah,
no, because if half the conversation's about their garden, it's like I've said to a customer, was it yesterday? No, it might have been yesterday or today because I went back to the job. So it was
yeah,
obviously yesterday. And we're chatting about their gardens quite a bit.
yeah,
And there was a couple of other things thrown in which weren't job related, but most of it was about the garden. So at the end of the conversation, I said, well, that's the end of the consult. I said, I better actually do some work.
yep,
So, yeah, I know what you mean. I have taken 10, 15 minutes off of my time.
yeah,
And I think in the end, you've got to realise that if you're greedy to the point of ripping your customer off, it's not going to, in the long term, make you wealthier. It's going to make you
yeah,
poorer.
yeah,
As I said before, you've got to treat your customers with respect and like royalty. So that's
yep,
just part of that.
yeah, for sure. So, Brian, I wanted to ask you a couple of other questions, things that I've just been tucking away in the background while we're talking. In the time you've been in business, have you ever done any formal qualifications? So, but particularly from the gardening perspective, like lawn mowing, there's not a lot of qualifications you might get unless you start going into greenkeeping or specialising in fertiliser and treatment applications. But with the gardening, have you done any training in horticulture or any like TAFE level training, anything like that?
I haven't done anything at the TAFE level. I've done I did a gardening course with Hunter, whatever it was. It was like a community thing where you went and did different
Oh, yeah.
courses for interest sake. And
Yeah.
the person who ran that course went over quite a few days. Her
Yep.
name was Helen White, and she absolutely nailed the basics of gardening with soil and plant selection, and making a basically rough design. And yeah, there were a lot of things that she covered in that time. I've still got the notes from that.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's the only formal training I've done apart from Smart Train chemical um,
Oh, yep.
application of chemical courses.
Yep.
Um,
Fair enough.
but to be, but I have been doing this with a great interest in gardening, apart from my interest in gardening, which I had right from childhood,
Yeah.
for 30 years. And I know things that a lot of horticulturalists wouldn't know, and they wouldn't get taught at horticultural college. And
I,
I'm also a trained school teacher, so in effect, because of my and that automatically sometimes means smart ass,
yes.
know it all. But I'm not really one of those. I don't know it all. I can tell you that now. But I
Yeah.
know enough that I could probably get a job with my experience and my
Mm.
teaching qualification as a tech teacher teaching horticulture.
Yeah. Okay. I would agree with you. I've noticed when talking to people that have formal training versus people who spend time getting educated in the garden itself, that a lot of the formal training doesn't translate into good wisdom and knowledge. You have to have that practical time in the gardens, and that's where people who have done a traineeship or an apprenticeship, that bring the two together, it's often beneficial. But yeah, I've found plenty of times where I'm talking to somebody else who's got a degree or they've got a trade level qualification. It's like, okay, there's things which I know which they either don't know or they've forgotten, and vice versa. It goes both ways.
Well, they tend to work in garden centres, and that's a very limited form of gardening knowledge. But also, they may be landscapers. That's also
Yeah.
very limited. Put as many plants as you can in a row.
Yeah.
You get more, paid more. Um,
Yep.
then after 6 weeks, you leave it, and then the customer's got to deal with whatever happens, and they grow into Jumanji. But I mean, I've been hired by horticulturalists, so
Yeah.
I've had customers as horticulturalists, and one
Yeah.
who was quite um, up there. She used to talk on radio shows in Canberra and so on.
Yep.
She told me that horticulturalists are a dime a dozen.
Yeah. Fair enough.
What does horticulture mean? I've looked it up, and it basically means someone who cares for plants and has a knowledge of plants.
Yep.
That makes me a horticulturalist.
Yeah. Well, I will admit that learning the names of plants is probably one of the most challenging things for me because I haven't done the formal training either. And so, when you're working with particular type of plant all the time, yeah, I know exactly what that is. But
Yeah.
to actually sit down and study the names, become familiar with the names of each type of plant that you're working with takes a bit more effort.
Oh, it's easy. It's so easy. I just call every plant I don't know: Cactus rectus, benedictus, Frigdus, Fructus, Maximus.
So, do you tell the customer this?
Occasionally, but but I've started to, like, as I get older, my head's becoming more like a sieve, and so
Yeah.
I'm having to exercise my memory muscles more
Yep.
to make it work. And so I'm doing things like learning songs as a guitarist and
Oh, yeah.
learning poetry to keep my memory going. But also I'm writing a lot of things on notes on my phone.
Yeah, that's a
I've
good
got
place to do it.
one note I've got is plant names. Now
Yeah.
I keep adding to that until it gets just an uncontrollable list, and then I'll actually maybe put them in alphabetical order or whatever. But if you do a search for anything on notes, it'll take you to that spot in your notes. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Yep.
important if you actually write down the name of the plant on a note on your phone under a little list of the ones you want to try and learn to remember. You'd be
Yeah.
amazed just writing it down how that reinforces
Makes
it
a big
in your mind.
difference.
Yeah.
I quoted one to somebody I was interviewing a couple of weeks ago, and they're not in our area. I can't remember exactly where they were from. Might have been down Melbourne, I think. And a plant name that's a common name, geisha girl. I know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know all
But
the different names of that. Yeah.
but when they said, "Oh, what plant is that?" because they're a horticulturalist and they didn't know the name geisha girl, I had to look up Duranta to find it. And I was like, "Oh, it's a Duranta."
Plant. And then you
they
look
still didn't know what that was.
You can actually click look up, and it'll tell you
Yeah.
what it is. It's Duranta,
Yes.
obviously.
Yeah.
There are different forms of Duranta.
But I've found some of the plants that I'm working with, when you try and do a lookup like that, it doesn't find it accurately. So
Not
there's,
always, but I've had some pretty good help from that feature.
yeah, I have too. But generally speaking, if I take a picture of something that is a hedge and I try and get a close up of what the leaf looks like, then most of the time it comes back and says it's Buxus.
What?
It comes back and tells me it's Buxus just because it looks like a hedge.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's really poor at identifying things. If it thinks it looks like a hedge, it just goes, "Yep, it's Buxus."
Well, then there's the other aspect of what I do, learning
Yep.
the names of weeds.
Yeah.
Because there are some of those weeds are really bad buggers, which have to be controlled.
Yes.
It's part of what a gardener does.
And a lot of them are
Knowing
edible.
what they are and knowing a little bit about them is actually very helpful.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's another thing that I've done that horticulturalists won't necessarily do. I've tackled every weed you can imagine and generally beat them. But that requires something else which I've got, which in my skill set, which is unusual, and that is the ability to persist with small details and really
Yeah.
be a fiddler. I've removed by hand weeding.
Yeah.
I've removed onion weed and oxalis completely out of gardens where it was in amongst plants.
Yeah.
You know,
That takes a lot of effort.
not many people would have the patience, and then not many customers have the money or the interest in paying for that either. But fortunately, I got both of that. So
Yeah, that's a persistent job to get rid of it completely.
yeah, that's where regular maintenance services mean so much more
Yep.
than just being someone who turns up and does a quick fix, because you can't quick fix stuff like that.
No, definitely not. So I guess that touches on one of the other things we've talked about, but I don't know that we've covered it here, is that you have a preference for hand weeding rather than using chemicals.
Well, yes, because often the chemicals will just burn off the foliage, and then um, you won't necessarily deal with all of the problem under the ground. Now, for instance,
Yeah.
if you spray onion weed, you'll kill the mother bulb.
Yeah.
But that has sometimes hundreds, even
Yep.
thousands of side bulbs, and they can be
Yep.
tinier than a pinhead. And
Same with nutgrass.
they take their time to mature to the point where they send up a shoot. That usually comes in about May or June.
Yeah.
And then it's like all over again. You'd be spraying forever. Uh, Nutgrass, sometimes I've had to give up and just spray it, and that's worked.
Yep.
But other times, by getting the damn thing out, then there's no more need to be spraying, is there? But I'm not against spraying. I spray, and I use half the recommended rate with all herbicides as well, because I was told that when I did my course by the Smart Train course by the guy who did the course, that's effective. It's still
That's
be
interesting.
half the rate. So
Yeah.
that cuts down the amount of chemicals in the environment that you're exposed with. Of course, if you're using sensible things like don't spray into the wind, that helps. But less toxic, but it's also effective.
Yeah.
Things like Ricardia in lawns, you can spray it, it'll die off, but generally the roots still remain viable because they're very long, thin roots, and also it's got tiny little brown seeds which
Yep.
will generate. So yeah, you've got to try and find another way, and hand removals over time combined with spraying is very good. Yeah,
So a lot of hand removal is what you're saying
yeah,
with the Ricardia.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
It just requires patience and diligence and a little bit of skill.
Yeah. Yep. So Ricardia and Oxalis are probably the two most invasive ones we see around our area.
Well, there's onion weed is the floral emblem of the inner suburbs of Newcastle, and around many places that are set on creeks and so on, like in New Lambton Heights and other places. They've got a creek down there, and
Yeah.
some of those places also in Coal Point. There's places with a little creek. If you're unlucky enough to get a weed called what is it again? Well, it'll come back to me. But anyway, there's this weed which basically grows corns, and then they drop thousands of those. If they go into a creek, it'll run down the creek and come up somewhere else, and then it grows a vine which is fleshy, and that fleshy vine can join into the ground and also produce seeds. What's it? It's Madeira vine. It's the worst weed in the world. If you ever come across it, and I've dealt with that.
Yeah, and I thought Wandering Jew was the worst one.
Wandering Jew is a piece of cake. That's really easy. Though it can be persistent if it goes deep into the ground in some sandy soils.
Chooks are pretty good at dealing with Wandering Jew.
In town, in Cooks Hill, there's a garden along the nature strip, and it's in amongst some plants, and I've never seen Wandering Jew send roots down as deeply as it does there, and I've never seen it anywhere else.
Okay.
Anywhere else you give it a spray, and usually that'll kill it, and then seedlings will come up.
Yeah.
And they don't respond to spraying very well.
Okay.
If you wait till they grow a bit bigger, then they'll take the spray in, or you just hand remove them. And you can use other methods like, putting down cardboard and putting mulch over that. One place I saw they put masonite on the garden. I've heard that using corrugated iron over things is the ultimate killer. They call it iron roundup.
Yeah. Yeah. I've found surfactant is necessary to deal with a lot of those weeds that have just got a really waxy leaf.
Well, they've got a surfactant built into them. And by putting the soap in there, you're actually changing the constitution of the product. But I've done it myself. However, just be aware that, some of those soaps like Morning Fresh and whatever really cut grease, and they also cut all the oils off the skins of frogs and things like that, So it's a lot of chemical that you're dealing with. It's not just soap is not just harmless stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do that to make it more effective.
Yeah. So, Brian, I think we've given people pretty good insight into your business over the last 30-something years, right? And people have learnt a fair bit about you. What's your thoughts about what's going to happen in the future? You're 66 now. Are you keeping on going?
That's a damn good question. You know what? By necessity, the old saying goes, I owe, it's off to work we go.
Yep.
Also, I like what I'm doing, and I feel fit and well and fitter than most people my age, so therefore I've set a goal to go for at least the next 10 years or even the next 15 years if I can. But perhaps reducing the workload, and as I go and the need for cash gets less and less because I've finished doing everything in my house.
Yep. So that'll put you into your 80s.
Pardon?
That will put you in your 80s if you go through 15 years.
I've seen people working as gardeners in their 80s, but they're not doing what I do. But Like there was this guy, and he was on Rick Stein's show, and he grows apples and other things on this plot in Cornwall. And he was as fit as a fiddle at 80. Peter Cunda was pretty fit at 80, still gardening. Yeah. So yeah, it depends on your genes and on your lifestyle and what you eat.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
What junk in, junk out, quality in, quality out. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt. Well, Brian, I've appreciated your time. It's been great to learn a bit more about you and your business. Is there anything you want to finish up with? Anything we've missed that's worth talking about before we finish up and say goodbye?
Yeah, I mentioned my faith earlier. I
Yeah.
would say that my faith is integral to my business and the way I've approached it. It takes a lot of bravery to just be in business, but also the situations that come up when you're in business, like if you get an injury or,
Yeah.
if it's you get a weather event that it knocks things around or something happens to the economy or COVID, and things like that. And I've seen so many miracles and answers to prayer. There's times I've driven out in pouring rain,
Yeah.
prayed about it, and got to, say, Warrabrook, which is a suburb of Newcastle, and had a circle a circle of blue sky above me.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
that's 9 times out of 10. If I drive out and work and head off in the rain, it doesn't rain when I get to my work. And,
Yeah.
based on the fact, of course, that it doesn't rain much in Australia, really.
Yep.
And so don't be put off by things like rain either, or heat or whatever. You've got to be sensible. But
Yep.
if you stayed home when the conditions weren't of the weather weren't perfect, you'll never go out at all. So you've got to be. There's a bit of toughness required. So my faith has been very important. Like I say, I've seen real answers to prayer financially and new customers that turned up. We had a storm in 2007, I think it was.
Yes.
And it was a bad storm. Business just went flat. And I reckon my business cut down worse than COVID from that. So I think I lost some customers as well at the same time. So
Yeah.
we're in a bit of a spot. So we committed that to prayer. And in the year of 2008, I picked up Bishop's Court, which was like a big property in Brown Street, residence of the Bishop of Newcastle at the time.
Yeah.
So that was like a once-a-week job for 5 or 6 hours a week. And I picked up Tip Top at the time. That was in the days of the ride on mower. And so I used to maintain Tip Top. I took over from a team of people that were looking after both of those places. So I replaced Derricon at Bishop's Court, and I replaced some other team of workers at Tip Top.
Yeah, wow. So God really looked after you.
Yeah, so we definitely believe in the power of prayer and in God to help us, and that's a crucial part of my life and my business. But yeah, we do have to apply ourselves as well. We can't just rely on, hey, Hail Mary, Mother of God, throw us down a couple of bob. It just doesn't quite work like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting talking about the weather that you're saying there. I've had numerous people say to me, "Oh, how can you handle being out in the weather like this?" And my response is, there's probably 3 to 10 days a year, and Australia throws you a curveball whenever you think you got it pegged, but say 3 to 10 days a year where the weather outside is not that good, and I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, I don't really enjoy my job today." Most of the days, I'm out there going, "I'm so much better off being outdoors instead of working in an office."
Absolutely. I think people need a bit of toughness about them. My grandmother, she was a gardener, and she had a spade when it was 40 degrees once, and she was very old, like in her late 70s, digging out the roots of a rubber tree with a spade. And it was 40 degrees and the sweat's dripping off her. And I said, Nan, what are you doing? It's 40 degrees. And she said, we British are tough, you know. That's my good old Evelyn, my grandmother.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Brian, I appreciate getting you in to do this interview. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.